Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, or good morning, depending on when you're listening to this. This is episode 4 of the Nightmare Hour podcast. I'm Adam, and I'm joined with my co-host, Eric Havens. Hi, Eric.
That is so good. You did like the entire public radio intro, and it's amazing.
Well, thank you.
You have the calming voice, and
I settled myself.
Yeah, it's calming, and you included everything and everyone. Mm-hmm. It was like chef's kiss. That was beautiful.
That was my first intro for this podcast. I feel like I've done a million on other podcasts, but this one is a different beast in itself. Mm-hmm. But this is the Nightmare Hour podcast, a podcast where we talk about all things horror related, and then we kind of talk about what they mean to the world and the people around it and us. And today we're going to be covering Clive Barker's Nightbreed, specifically the director's cut, although I will reference the differences in the ending and somewhat throughout the actual film. But we're most going to talk about Clive, like what this movie was to both of us growing up, because I remember seeing it as a child, and my feelings as a kid versus as an adult were very different. And also we'll get into kind of what it meant to Clive and what it means to us and the world of horror.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right?
I think, yeah, it sounds good. And I do want to add, I think we purposely picked this. We're going through some movies that we wanted to talk about. And since this podcast is still kind of forming what it is, we wanted, because last week we kind of referred to the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests and everything that's been going on. And then this week, to continue with that, as you probably know, it's Pride Month. So we decided it would be appropriate to talk about those issues and how horror has portrayed those and dealt with those issues. And this was the movie that seemed the most interesting with that theme to us that we're going to talk about. So that's why Nightbreed came up, because when I watched it as a child, was because that is the last time I saw it, and it was not the director's cut, because I'm assuming that was not available when I was young. No,
so the director's cut was long supposed to have been lost to the world, given so Morgan Creek made it. 20th Century Fox owns the film, and Morgan Creek's been around for a number of years, but they all but lost the original negative, and then I think it was 2012, somewhere around 2012, when a tape was discovered that was a work print of the film that had about an hour of extra footage, and then that was spliced back into the higher quality print at the time, which I think was a DVD, and that was screened, and it was called the Cabal cut at the time. And then they kept digging, and it found new life on the internet. So a group called Occupy Midian launched, and they wanted to find a way to restore the actual film print, and then Clive got involved, and then eventually Morgan Creek found a box of the original negatives, and they were able to recut the movie with Clive and his approval, and then the director's cut came out from, I think, Scream Factory put it out. But it's now on, I think Shudder has it. I think Tubi has it. Is that where you watched it on Tubi?
Yeah, Tubi, yeah.
The Blu-ray is great. It's cheap. I think it was $15 or something. And it's a double disc. It also has the hour-long making of and a new commentary. It's got a lot of cool features, but it's got the intro where they kind of talk about how we got to this new director's cut. But apparently there's another cut of the film, so this is Clive's director's cut, but there's a longer one that I think we're going to get at some point. So I like how no, I think just people. I think we're going to get it. People. It's going to be called. It's the Cabal cut is actually all the footage you could possibly have. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean it's better, but it's probably what the work print would be, just cleaned up with a good score and everything.
I saw some of that when I was researching. There's when she saves the little girl that's also a hairless cat. That scene's a lot longer that they've took out even the director's cut. I saw some stuff from that where she's talking to the little cat child thing.
There was pretty extensive reshoots during this from the studio as they were shooting it, and the movie came out what the fuck is this? So I think the theatrical has a lot different than the director's cut, and then the Cabal cut I think includes things from both things, because the theatrical cut is more about Cronenberg feels like more prominent as the villain than he does in this one, in the director's cut. In the director's cut, it's more everybody outside of Midian versus Midian, I think. And Cronenberg just kind of is like this exterior force of evil that happens to kind of be pushing things forward, but he's not necessarily the main villain. I almost think it's more the police. Like this actually kind of works pretty heavily as like a police brutality film.
Yeah, that's you're getting ahead of us though. You're jumping to the end of the podcast.
But that was like a quick version of how we got to this version. But you can catch it in a lot of places. And the director's cut was released by Scream Factory in 2014. So and
there's no reason not to watch it because it's like you said, like Tubi's totally free and it's just sitting up there. You can watch it for free.
But yeah, that's I guess what is Nightbreed? Do you want to read the official synopsis? Do you want me to read the official synopsis, or what do you?
Sure, read it. I don't have it in front of me, so if you have it, do it.
Yeah, I do. So it's got a 38% on Rotten Tomatoes, 6.6 out of 10 on IMDb. But that is based on, I'm guessing, the theatrical cut, not the director's cut. I do believe a lot of people prefer the director's cut. I don't know where I lied just yet in this movie. The movie's a conundrum, I think. But here's the official synopsis. Aaron Boone is haunted by terrifying nightmares of a city of monsters. He goes to see a psychiatrist, Dr. Decker, played by David Cronenberg, for help. But what Boone doesn't know is that Decker is really a serial killer. Decker frames Boone to take the fall for his murders, and Boone is killed by police. But Boone is brought back to life by the monsters of his dreams, the Nightbreed, who in turn joined Boone in a quest to stop Decker from killing again. That's definitely not a
synopsis. That's like Cliff Notes. That just told us the movie.
That is definitely the one sentence is: a troubled young man is drawn to a mythical place called Midian, where a variety of friendly monsters are hiding from humanity. Meanwhile, sadistic serial killer is looking for a patsy.
Yeah, friendly monsters seems a little of an overstatement too.
Both those premises, I would say, are weird and not correct. I mean, there's for sure what happens in the movie, but
in their defense, that movie is just like almost indescribable. Like, who knows what the hell's going on half the time?
Yeah,
like it's just like a fever dream. That's what I love. Like the last few, with the exception of Thriller, that was pretty commercial. But like the Amityville horror movies and this now is like these these low budget horror movies from the '80s. They're just insane. We don't get movies like that anymore. Like they don't. No. Some of them don't even make sense. They're just like these like random flashes of imagery and stuff happening and like a quick explanation sometimes not. Things just jump to this and it's kind of great. Like I forgot about these movies and like this era of cocaine horror. I think that's what we're calling it, right?
Cocaine horror. Yeah. I mean, I think Clive Barker would call this cocaine horror for sure.
Yeah. It's just weird to me. Like I saw this movie. I was maybe 12. I don't know. I was really, really young. It was like when I was first really like sneaking out of my religious household and like watching horror movies at friends' house. And I don't remember particularly liking it. I just remember thinking this is, like kind of what I watched this time, but through a child's eye. It's just like, what the hell's going on? There's all this stuff. Some of it is really cool looking, but I don't understand what's happening and why. But when I watched it this time, especially through like my adult eyes and through the prism of like Pride Month and the LGBQT plus too many letters, man. It's hard.
Yeah, IA plus.
Yeah, but I mean, representation matters. So I'll try. I also can't talk well though. But like watching it now and seeing the obvious parallels and symbolism of that, like what the plot doesn't have narratively, like the allegory of it and what it presents is like really pretty powerful and pretty amazing and interesting. And like it feels almost like some kind of Dadaism exploration of the emotion of what it is to be like queer in the United States. And like watching it through that lens is amazing because, as if any of you know me personally or have me on social medias, you know that like I finally took the time this month to come out as pansexual, which took me as like a long journey, which is still like the verbiage of it all is confusing to me. I just went with pansexual because I'm attracted to the person and not like what parts they were born with. And I know bisexual is kind of like the preferred term to some, but I just wanted to be more inclusive to that. But I don't know. I've gotten some conversations from people why bisexual is better, why pansexual is better, why genderqueer is better. It's all a journey, and they're words and they're hard, but it's an important conversation to have. But anyway, like coming out that way, even though I'm in like a happy monogamous opposite sex like engagement marriage, it was so freeing for me just to like come out and say who I was, not only like in a secret kind of way, just to affirm to myself, because I grew up never really fitting into any of these roles. And I'm old enough that when I was a youth, none of this existed. It was like, it was gay, and then all the like slurs that go along with that are straight. That was it. Mm-hmm. And I didn't understand either. Like I wasn't either. And being in the middle and trying to like navigate my gender, my sexual attractions, my preferences, it's like really fucking hard. And watching this movie now with those experiences, now that I'm in my 40s, there's a lot in there that really I could relate to that I didn't have any idea of when I was watching as a child. Like there were just like flashes of imagery that I didn't understand. But when you actually live like a secrecy thing or as an outsider in a way that I think a lot of people don't understand, like you understand Midian, like in a way that's pretty personal. Like, yeah. How long did I ramble now?
I think only like 20 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, but there's like a lot we can talk about, like stuff in the movie too, but like that makes me think about that. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I think we'll just kind of go step by step like we usually do through the premise of the film, which is kind of, I will say the movie, I think both theatrical and especially, I think if anybody sees the director's cut for the first time, they're going to feel like it's a little Terrence Malick-y. It's a little meandering feeling. But it does give you, so the difference, I did have a note here for the times. The times are 102 minutes, 120 minutes, 145 minutes, which is the Cabal cut. But apparently there's an extended Cabal cut that's closer to 3 hours I don't know if we'll get. The Cabal cut's not available either right now, but so you can have the theatrical, which is 102 minutes, or the director's cut, which is what we're talking about today, at 120 minutes. But the director's cut also has a different ending, and there's some scenes swapped out or extend. Like as they did pretty often in the time, they would do like a pan and scan style of pushing in or using alternate takes.
Yeah.
So Boone, the movie doesn't screw around, at least in the first 15.
Oh no. There's so much it introduces that they never really explore. It's like, oh, by the way, I've been in therapy all this time and I've had these visions of this, but we never see that. We never experience it. It's after he's quit going to therapy, and he keeps getting these like calls from David Cronenberg, the therapist, saying, I need to see you. And,
isn't he like coming out of the shower in that scene?
Yeah. Like there's a lot of like sexy man flesh at the beginning of this movie.
And then
I don't think he gets dressed. Yeah, Boone doesn't get dressed until like 12 minutes in, I don't think.
Well, Boone shows up in like a bondage outfit.
Yeah.
Well, it's like a poor man's version of like what Patrick Swayze wore in every movie at the time, and then he threw like a cheap leather jacket on. He's got a very nice mullet in this. I mean, there's a lot of interesting styles happening. I think all over the place here. But Boone and so Dr. Decker, played by Cronenberg, is a psychiatrist who is also a serial killer who has a very cool mask in this.
Very great mask. But Cronenberg is the weirdest actor I've ever seen. Like he's like Werner Herzog on like Valium. Like he just whispers his lines very calmly. Like there's no inflection ever. He's just like, hello. I think that we are going to do this now. And that's like the entire, no matter what's happening, if he's threatening, if he's fighting, it's still like, I'm going to kill you. It's just like very like, it's like what is that? The ASMR or whatever of like serial killers. That's what he is. It's just not like his acting style was very, like it kind of worked for this, but it was like is he acting or is he just reading? Like is he reading a nighttime story right now?
Yeah. So I was just making a note here about the premise, which, okay, so they have this weird kind of patient doctor relationship. I mean, Decker is clearly sketchy. I'm just gonna say, like, from like scene one, like he's not only like heavily flirting with his client, he also offers him, which at the time I guess lithium was like a normal thing, but he gives him like lithium to calm down after he's telling him he's having visions of monsters. And
they didn't even tell him what it was. He was just like, take this. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, he just says he's seen. I'm trying to remember.
Well, no, that's weird. Like, that's what I mean. This movie is very fever dreamy because in like a narrative based film, you have a guy like going back to the therapist that he did all this work with. We know what the sessions were about, for one, but two, all he does is like, here's these pictures of murders, and all your sessions that I'm just telling you about, you talk about these murders that I just decided to tell you about right now. and then the Boone's just like, oh, okay, I'm a killer. Like, there's no like conflict there. It's just like, this is the way we're going, everyone. Like, this is our setup. It's very, very strange to watch because there's no pushback from him at all. He's like, oh shit, I've been killing people. Damn, give me some Valium. I'm gonna go to the club. That's the next part of this movie.
Well, and he does give him. Is it Valium? I thought it was lithium for some reason.
Oh yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, and then, but it's not. It's actually like some form of LSD.
Yeah,
and he's like, so then that kind of sends him on this. How does he? I can't even. It happen. Okay, this is all literally within the first 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah,
it sends him into. I don't even know how he gets to Midian other than he's had like a dream about Midian.
Yeah, he talks about this place he's had a dream about. Like, we start off with the dream sequence. Like, he wakes up and he sees all the monsters in the graveyard and all that stuff. But that's as close as any background we get on this place or why he's dreaming about it or how he's attached to it. We don't know any of that. But I think that's more into what we'll get in with like the symbolism, because I do think that is like the LGBTQT plus like community and his part in it, because he's definitely has like elements of being like at least bisexual, right? Like the relationship with the therapist and his girlfriend, and
yeah, I would say for sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's very coy about that. Like, his sexuality is very fluid in this movie, for sure.
Yeah, but well, and then so Dr. Decker, we only I think see him kill. He kills in the first 10 minutes. Like, yeah. I mean, the first scene is him the first scene with Dr. Decker, which is I think the second scene in the movie after he has that sex. It starts with like a sex scene with Boone, right?
Yeah, he wakes up and then
like a nightmare sex scene.
Yeah, he wakes up all sexy from Nightmare, and she's like, "Let's go somewhere."
And then scene 2 is like his doctor, like they set
after he gets out of the shower. So scene 3.
Scene 3, he like talks to the doctor, and the doctor's like, "Whatever, take this lithium and calm down or whatever you need to." and then Boone leaves, and Decker immediately pulls out like his straight razor that he's clearly going to murder somebody with, and has his mask in there. It's like a nice little carrying case.
Yeah. It is. I mean, if you're a serial killer,
it is an awesome fucking mask. But like scene 3, we know who the killer is. Like, we know he's the villain, and and then I think the next scene he goes, it's like in random suburbia, and he murders a whole family, right? Yeah, like the most like American actual. That's the best casting in the world. Usually they have like the Hollywood version of an American Family. That's an American family in that. It's just it's probably what inspired Rob Zombie to make movies. It's like a white trash kind of family of a sense. Like, the dad's like kind of a piece of shit, like sitting like making his wife bring him dinner. His wife's like running the whole family, but then there's like a kid that no one's paying attention to upstairs watching, like, not necessarily abuse, but like there was some weird shit happening. Like, they were like, I don't know, like they were kind of like having some sexy time or something. I don't know what's happening, but the kid's just been on the top of the stairs watching everything happen, watching his parents get murdered. And then he himself, I believe, gets murdered. We don't see it, but it's heavily implied that happens. Yeah.
I think they show it in the photographs or whatever, the crime scene photographs.
Yeah.
That the family's been murdered.
But then there's not really I guess Decker quickly pins his murders on his patient who's crazy.
And we just go along with that too, which he has no proof, and the police just believe him automatically. It's just, and that's what I mean. Like the plot, if you look at this just by a plot, this movie is pretty bad. Like nothing's really like set up or paid off. It's just things happening, and we just have to accept it as an audience and like go with it. Like there's nothing. Yeah, like nothing really makes sense where like a character's actions never been like, oh yeah, I can see why they're doing that. It's just like, oh, they're doing that. Like, okay. We just have to follow along with it. But yeah, like he's on the drug. Like I want to talk about that song because he's on the drugs to go because his girlfriend's a singer in a band apparently, and he goes to the club and they spend a large portion of this movie, which I understand this song wasn't in the theatrical cut at all. Like they cut that out. Like this song is part of the director's cut. But I looked it up because it's basically a song she's singing about. It almost sounds like a call to arms, like because she just wants this guy to be angry and to fight for her, like the lyrics and stuff. But it's got like the lyrics were "I want a brave man," and then I saw that as a cover of an old song, and it's like "I want a brave man." The original lyrics were "I want a caveman, Johnny get angry, Johnny get mad, give me the long baddest lecture I've ever had, blah blah blah." Like it's like a call to arms, like stand up for yourself, you like fight for what you want. But I swear in this song, instead of caveman, at least one of the refrains she says gay man. Like I want a brave man, I want a gay man. I went through, I can't tell, it could still be caveman, but I swear I hear that in there. But even if it doesn't, I think that song and that they spend I think it played, like she plays the entire song. Like we watched the whole performance, like the whole song. So I think that is a very intentional like message to that community, especially when we see with Midian and stuff, because they're all hiding. Like these people are all hiding. And this message is like, we need to get angry. We need to get mad. And that's where this ties into, I was going to talk about this beginning because I think our podcast, like we were trying to like connect horror movies to real life and stuff. And since this is Pride Month and I was watching this, there's a real life event that people talk about during Pride Month that I thought I knew about, but I read about and I really didn't. And that's the Stonewall riots.
Well, hang on. Should we go? Because that's going to like tie in more towards like the last act of this movie, right?
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. But like,
you just
we can go through as like,
it won't take us long to get there. No. I was ready to just walk to there's like literally like 3 major events happened before that.
Yeah.
So
I do. Like during the before the Stonewall riots, like just to give the background of like how this fits into the history of homosexuality in this country, it's just like I was reading stuff. I mean, I knew, like we all know, like if you were gay in the 50s or before and beyond, like you couldn't be like out, like you had to hide, like you had to sometimes have a opposite sex like spouse and have a cover and like have these like underground clubs and these underground communities you had to go to. And I like after World War II, when McCarthy did all the communists and like fascists and put people on the list, homosexuals were included in that list, which was nuts to me. Like that, they were enemy combatants of this country. Like there's a quote from the report that he was working on. It says, "It's generally believed that those who engage in overt acts of perversion lack the emotional stability of normal persons. And they're in complete agreement the sex perverts and government constitute security risks." Like that's where we were as a country. And then in 1952, the American Psychiatric Association listed homosexuality as a mental disorder, and they explained it as a pathological hidden fear of the opposite sex caused by traumatic parent-child relationship. Like that's where we were then. And that's still recently. It wasn't that long ago before that was removed from the mental illness, the thing. Yeah. So anyway, we don't have to talk about Stonewall. I just wanted to lay background.
I think we should. Do you know what the date was for Stonewall?
Let me have it here. This is where like we do research, but then our brains aren't that good. It happened June 28th to July 3rd, 1969. So that's why I believe that's why Pride Month is June. is because
I mean, that was only 21
40
years. I mean, I guess he was probably I don't know when
since the movie, yeah.
I don't know when the book Nightbreed was written, but which I can probably 1988, so 20 years, less than 20 years. Let's get back real quick to the plot, and because I think that's probably going to be an important thing to cover because of how I think it matches that ending. Okay, so Decker's given LSD disguised as lithium, and Decker eventually convinces Boone to turn himself in. Boone goes crazy. He's running around the city, gets hit by a car, goes to the hospital, where he meets a man who's like seemingly like out of his mind and looking out the window, and he's talking about Midian. And
again, by like plot point, what are the odds he's going to run into like the one other person who knows about Midian?
That's how
going to explain it.
That's the guy who gives him like not a map. He didn't give him a map, but he basically tells him exactly where to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's like, here's where Midian is, by the way. Now cut off.
And then he shows, he takes his face off, and he's one of the monsters, which nobody else in the rest of this movie. Okay, well, we'll get to what the monsters look like, but nobody else wears a Mission Impossible style mask in this movie besides this guy. But it is a cool reveal. And then Boone immediately goes to Midian, which is a graveyard in the middle of nowhere. I feel like this is Texas. Do you feel like this is meant to be Texas?
I have no feeling on that. I don't know, honestly. Like, I didn't get a feel of anything. Like, the cops like definitely Texas. Feel very Southern, like the tough guy cops later.
Yeah, I guess like the graveyard and like those wide shots, it just feels very like Texas to me. I don't know.
Okay. Sure.
But then he immediately, when he gets into the graveyard, he encounters two of the monsters, and they try to take him below, and he freaks out, and he's like, "I'm a murderer," blah blah blah, and then he runs out of. They chase him. Yeah, they bite him too. They attack him, and then Boone runs away, and then outside of Midian, some fucking way, Decker and a whole squad of police are out there, but I don't know how they find him.
No, I don't. Well, I think that he tortures the faceless man that Deckard does, and he tells him where to go. He gives like this faceless man's given everybody like directions to Midian, which is a terrible like secret person to have, like just giving directions to everyone. But I also want to like, that's really strange too, because he's going in there and like, I'm one of you, I'm a murderer and all this stuff, and the monsters are like, no, you're not, you're clean, blah blah blah, you're a normal or whatever. And they attack him and bite him, but that's how he figures out. Like, he believes them too. Like, he's like, "Oh, I'm innocent." It's just so strange how this main character, like his psychiatrist, is like, "Oh, you killed all these people." And he's like, "Oh, okay, shit." And then this monster's like, "No, you didn't." He's like, "Oh, okay."
Oh shit.
Yeah, exactly. He just believes whatever anyone tells him. It's strange. He's like waffling between these sides.
Well, and then when he catches up with the cops, he's Decker's like, he approaches him. He's like, he's got a gun, and they just blow his ass away. They like shoot him like RoboCop style. They shoot 30 times, and he dies like right at the gates of Midian, which I don't think it's explicitly stated, but I believe because he died on the soil is why he's able to be brought back up to life.
I thought it was the bite.
Oh, is it the bite?
I think so. I think it was the bite.
Okay.
But like you said, that there's real like, because that's part of the like they show like the cave paintings.
Oh, yeah. I guess you're right. You're right. Because at the end of this movie, the bite is what brings people back. So, but they don't really describe too much about what the bite exactly is. But it's, I guess it's vampirism. Does that tie into what would that represent at the time? Like being bit to change?
I think the only thing I could think of is like it involves a lot of like blood, so it could be like a HIV thing.
Yeah,
at the time. But that's kind of a stretch. I think it's just that. Honestly, I think that's just
vampirism type thing.
It's like it's like an easy MacGuffin to get him inside the thing. I don't think they really thought that through as much. And I don't even know. Like honestly, I don't know. Like when he wrote the book and the movie and directed it, that he had these grand thematic allegory ideas. It might have just been a story about these people And I did find an interview or a Q&A with him, like when they released the director's cut. And it was like, he does know, or he was saying that the movie is about, quote unquote, like the weirdos, the people who are born differently than everyone else. Like they're born to like make art, or they're born to like love people of the same sex or gender, and like celebrating that. And that's where I found like my favorite Clive Barker quote when he was talking. He was going through that, like how it's different and all this, and he was like, now I know, like, I was born to make art and suck cock. And I think that's like the most eloquent way to put what this movie's about, because it's like this community that doesn't fit in, and have been, like, we're talking about like what I put, this history of how gay people were treated in the country. Like they have a very explicit flashback scene of all these Nightbreed being like decapitated and killed by like these militaristic people. Like they've been annihilated. They're the last of their kind, and they're hiding. Like they've been oppressed basically. So I think he knows that part, but like the intricacies of biting, and I don't know if they're really that intentional, is my point, which I took like 18 minutes to say.
Well, from here, some weird stuff happens. I'm just gonna go quickly through.
From here, weird stuff happens.
Well, it's just like okay. So the initial setup's not too bad. It's very quick, even in the director's cut. But then Boone's girlfriend Lori, who is not too big of a character up until like 30 minutes, she becomes kind of the main character for quite a while. She's trying to find she's trying to like understand why Boone left and was shot at this place,
and then where his body went, because he wakes up and goes away, and his body disappears from the morgue. And she meets a woman named Cheryl Ann and convinces and they both decide to go to Midian, and Cheryl stays at the car for some reason, and while Lori goes into the cemetery by herself and immediately meets one of the monsters, which is like one of the coolest ones, I think, like this wolf-like cat creature thing. It's like, like this hairless cat that's dying in the sun.
Yeah, and she takes it inside and meets this other woman who looks normal, and the cat thing kind of transfers back into a little girl, and there's like this like I don't know, mother-daughter relationship with the three kind of happening. Meanwhile, outside the cemetery at the car where Cheryl was left, Decker shows up and murders her.
Yeah.
Because why the fuck not? And then all this is happening, I think, at the same time as underneath in the ground, Boone is like now pledged his allegiance to
he went through the he went through the initiation and all that.
And he knows she's there. Like there's all these like tunnels and shafts that like lead up top, and they could hear, and he can hear that Lori's there, and like Rachel's like giving Lori an education on like here's like Baphomet and Nightbreed and all this stuff. And then Boone's like what does Boone do? I can't remember.
His like the Deckard's coming after her in the cemetery.
Oh, he chases her, and he's like, I'm gonna go save her, and they're like,
that's after the Nightbreed's like, you can't interfere with they'll know we're here, blah blah blah. So it's kind of like the Romeo and Juliet thing at this point, where he's breaking his ties to save the other side, the person from the other side. Yeah,
he saves the normie. Well, kind of like he doesn't really save. He has to decide between going after Decker and saving Lori, and he of course chooses Lori. Decker runs away. Decker goes to the police and is like, I found him. We need to. He goes to like a nearby gas station and is totally a creep there. And
let's just really like plot wise, can we talk about what a weird choice it is for Deckard not to like play coy? He's just like, hey, police officers, I found this city of monsters.
And the cops are like, the cavalry.
Oh, okay. And the cops know, they're like, huh, all right. Can they just go?
Yeah.
That's what I mean. This movie doesn't have any like traditional reasoning or setup or payoff. They're just like, this is what we're doing, and all the characters are like, okay, this is what we're doing. It's just, it feels very strange in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, so then the cops make a plan to raid Nightbreed, and it's not just the police, it's everybody in the town. And this is why it feels very like Texas to me. It's like
well, it just feels current events to me. Like, it looked like MAGA, like militiamen and vigilantes, and they're all like militarying up, like police officers putting on their tactical gear, like shields over their face and all. Like, it's very what Stonewall was. Like it was very like violent riots of that community. And so it's crazy. Like not only I think it turns and like talks about Stonewall at that point, because I'm sure that he was aware of those events, but currently not with necessarily the LGBQT community, but just the way we're having that discussion in those protests now about police overreach and the militarization, that's a hard word to say, of police officers. And like, why are they storming this place? Like, there's no reason to do what they're doing. Like, there's so much excessive violence when they come to this place, and it seemed like it's kind of hit close to home with just current events, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, you have a militia that it just feels very like Southern or Texas to me, like just in like how it's shot and like their outfits and attire. There's like a lot of like cowboy aesthetic like happening, and they all head to Midian, and then this is Midian. I guess we have to talk about the priest they meet, Ashbury, who is an alcoholic who the police bring in. Because
he was a weird
holy water, right? That's basically, they're like, get your crosses and your holy water, and he's like kind of a priest at a crossroads.
He's a drunk.
Yeah. I don't think. Well, they pick him up in jail, and they don't really give us much information. But I'm guessing he's like meant to be like a priest who is at the crossroads of his own beliefs, and that's why he's such an alcoholic. And he's supposed to be the man of God to defeat these monsters. But when they arrive, they have to attack at night, or they attack during the day, and they're trying to leave before night because Nightbreed comes out at night, of course. And then fucking all hell breaks loose as I forget, like what do they go do? Like Boone gets arrested, right? Is that somehow,
like he gets set up. Deckard like kills all the people in the hotel they're staying at.
That's what happens.
I mean, he does that.
And then he's arrested though. It's hilarious. They're like, but this guy wasn't he dead? Like someone in the media, like, is this the same guy you guys shot last week and now he's back alive?
And like, what?
The sheriff's like, what? Nobody told me.
And then the doctor comes into like the jail cell and he's like, this man is dead. Just so chill about it. Yeah. Like, I can't find a pulse. This man's dead. I'm like, oh.
And then weird. And then they all show up to bust him out, which is like a fun little short sequence.
Yeah, that's fun.
And then they have to make a race back to Midian, where things have already,
because now we're told that he's the chosen one. That's how we're like, oh, by the way, you have to save us all. You're the chosen one. And we see all those cave paintings and stuff.
Nobody tells them that before, though. They're just like, well, they were surprised that he could be in, like, he touched Baphomet, right?
Yeah, he went down to talk to, like, I think that's right before all this is like, he goes down and talk to
Baphomet's
Baphomet,
pretty cool,
which is
too.
Like, he's the god of gay or something. I don't know. Like, he's like the godfather of gay. Like, he's down there. He created all of Midian and just kind of is attached to it. I don't know how you would explain that. He's kind of very like Alien, like the ending of Aliens, where you see the mother attached to the entire egg laying place. He's like kind of that
attached to the whole all of Midian kind of thing.
He is Midian.
It's cool. But then a battle rages on. Baphomet's like the god of Midian, but there's like an old man who's like very wizardly, who's the leader, and he's like
the prime minister.
We gotta hide. No, everyone hide. It'll be fine. And then Boone literally simultaneously kicks in a door and was like, let's go fight these fuckers.
Which goes back to that song. He's getting angry. He's Johnny Get Angry. He's like, we gotta stand up. Like we have to make a stand.
And they do. They stand pretty awesomely. Like there's I mean, this goes on.
Man,
I would say the fights are like at least 15 minutes.
probably more. Like that is a lot, and
minutes.
we do like on a logistical level. Besides anything else, like the creature effects and all the practical effects and everything is really fucking amazing in this movie. Like all the designs and how they're used and interacted and look on screen. It's amazing. Like I kept thinking, like for this small little horror movie from the 80s that was a flop, like how much money did they dump into like those creature effects and stuff?
I think it's Howard Berger. I think it's KMB did them. I'm pretty sure.
I don't know, but they're great.
Didn't make that, but I think Howard Berger did them. But yeah, the effects in this, I mean, there's not one monster that's the same. They're all. It's interesting because it's kind of, you know, it would make it interesting double feature, I think, with Beetlejuice in a weird way, because a lot of their creatures are very similar. Although that's, I mean,
Nightbreed might be, but Nightbreed might be in the same universe as Beetlejuice. Like they might have to go to that waiting room and.
Yeah, that's true. We don't really get that much information. I mean, it's truthfully, it could be. You're right. I mean, everyone in Nightbreed is presumably had been dead at one point, right, and brought back to life, resurrected as a new.
I don't know. It's very unclear. I mean, it seemed very like ethnic, like they're different because of like their beginnings.
But they're all fucking cool. The woman who has like porcupine spikes, every time I see her, I'm like, that's the coolest fucking creature design in this movie. And then the guy was like,
wasn't she not in the theatrical one? Didn't they like pretty much cut her?
Maybe. I mean, every scene was very sexual with her, so probably. The man in the moon face.
Yeah, I love that guy.
He makes me laugh every time I see him. It's just, anyways, we're getting off a little off track here, but Boone's like, let's go fight. And they've only had like mentioned once were these like things called berserkers.
Oh yeah, these like, yeah.
And they're absolutely getting destroyed in Nightbreed. Like, I mean, the fight's like going back and forth, but the firepower is just so much more on the human side. And Boone's
they bring out a fucking rocket launcher. Like, what militia has a rocket launcher?
So they're
that's
like,
gotta be like,
let's get the berserkers, and the berserkers are like chuddy stop motion. Like
it kind of reminded me more of like his Hellraiser stuff than anything in this. Like they're very like creatures of hell kind of looking.
Yeah,
stuff.
like they just have a mouth with like spots where eyes should be, but yeah, they're very demonic looking, and they just destroy fucking everything. I mean, they
go berserk.
Yeah. And then that guy Doug Bradley, he's the one who lets him out and he dies immediately. Letting them out. Doug Bradley's actually awesome in this movie. His character is really cool. He also has a cowboy thing going on too.
Yeah, he does. And is he the one with the
face
pet? Is he the one with who's the guy with the little pet doggy?
Oh, no. Bradley's the guy who drives the car. He's got the cowboy hat on.
Really?
Blood all around him. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, he is great in this.
Yeah, he's really good in this. And then basically they kill pretty much everyone. The priest, Baphomet. Like the berserkers kill everything. Decker confronts Boone, and then Boone just murders him. And then Boone turns to Baphomet, and Baphomet's like, this was predicted. This is the end of Midian. You have to be the leader now. Peace.
Your new name is Cabal.
Oh, yeah. He's like, yeah, you are now Cabal. And then he just disappears he dies or something, I guess. And then the last part of this almost feels like it was directed by somebody totally different. Like, it's so artistically done.
Yeah.
Do you, like,
it does. Like, the very last shots feel like very, like, old school Hollywood, like Gone with the Wind almost, where you have like the tapestries that are supposed to be like 3-dimensional stuff, but it's like the sky that's too like pink and stuff. And it does. It looks very like 30s Hollywood.
And then we find the priest. The priest.
Yeah, that was I would still don't know what because I'm looking at this through our Pride Month and like all of that. I don't know what that's supposed to represent, because at first I thought it was like, you know, the troubled history of religion and like homosexuality, but then he's sort of like this is holy ground, and he respects Midian, and he's like, we shouldn't be here, and he defends them at first.
Yeah,
but then he goes down and tries to talk to Baphomet or whatever, and is turned into a Nightbreed himself, and that makes him basically like he's turned into like he wants to hunt down all the Nightbreed and kill them by the end of the movie. So that like it just seems very mixed on how it's representing religion in this movie. Like it's like towards the end when he's trying to kill, that makes sense to me because religion has been trying to eradicate homosexuality since I've been aware of it. But like this beginning part where he has this respect for it, that was confusing to me.
Yeah, and he also stops, and at first he's like we shouldn't be here, and then but he's not really stopping them. Then he's like, there's women and children here, we can't, like, what are we doing? And he tries to stop the guy and gets like thrown to the ground, and then he's like, fuck this, and then he
this should have been the synopsis, just you.
And then he runs into Baphomet, and he's like, my new god, basically. And but the end is kind of weird because he's all like, he's kind of a monster, but not I mean, he's not his normal self. And the sheriff finds him, and then he kills the sheriff, right?
Yeah.
And then
I think maybe he's like the new version, because like there is this the queer community standing up and fighting, and eventually, even though their home and so many of their friends and family are destroyed, like they kind of succeed, and they have this new community, and they have a new leader, and they're out, and they're out of the hidden spot. They're out in the open, and I think like they succeed in that way. But I don't like. I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
But doesn't
quality podcast?
Doesn't the priest, like, he's angry though, like at Nightbreed?
Yeah, he's at both. Like, so there's
he's angry at everybody, right?
Like, yeah, like, so maybe this is the new, like, his of like the new like phase that we're in this like the homosexuality and other identities being out. Maybe religion is also like this person's the one that's kind of shed the old like oppressive thing that the sheriff was, but they still hate the gay people too. So it's like this new trajectory of society where, yeah, it's like some kind of hybrid of in between of like the 50s and now. Like, I don't know. I'm reaching.
Yeah, well, and then the end. So after the battle, after the priest kills the cop and like screams into the night that he was going to find the Nightbreed. At the same time, Lori, the sun's rising.
She kills herself. I forgot about that.
Lori's like, he's like, I gotta go. I gotta find a place for the Nightbreed, and
she's like, yeah, she wants to be part of it.
I'll be old when you come back because you're gonna be forever young. And then he's like,
and Rod Stewart shows up and starts singing.
They say goodbye, and then as they're like holding, she's like, and stabs herself, and he's like, "You bitch! I didn't want to see you again." And
that's not psychologically healthy. That's like some codependency stuff. Like you can't force someone to be with you like that.
It was definitely a move. And then she's like dying, and he has to bite her just like he was bit, and then.
She's a Nightbreed.
Then she gets up, and then they walk down to like this barn. It is super old Hollywood. It's
I don't think
really cool.
They don't ever make it to the barn though. I think it's just you see the group saying Cabal will come for us, and you see
he said
shots.
They're talking about him, right? Like he's Cabal, he unmade Midian, he will like whatever. Fine.
Yeah, it's definitely a setup for a sequel, which I saw that this was supposed to be a trilogy, but since the first one flopped so hard that it just never happened. Because it's definitely set up like you got this priest now as like the new enemy, and they have this new group over here, and a new leader. It's definitely set up for more.
How will he come to take us to the New Haven? And that they say, in the next wind, if not tonight, then tomorrow, in the next wind. And then it cuts to them like walking, like them in like the cool, like frozen image. And then it turns into, it starts with cave paintings of like Nightbreed, and then it ends with them as a cave painting in Nightbreed.
Yeah.
And then that's it. That's the Nightbreed. That's the director's cut of Nightbreed. The original ending was only slightly different, where Laurie, Boone leaves Medina and Laurie meets. I'm trying to remember exactly. I know that he basically resurrects Deckard in the last one. The priest does, yeah, and he's like,
just because. Yeah.
My God is here. Or he says like, thank God or hallelujah or some shit like that. Like he screams into the night, but the sheriff doesn't come. It's Deckard that he finds like Decker's dead body, and then he brings him back. He resurrects him in some way. Which like both of them end as like a cliffhanger to like there's a new villain. Like one of them's like is more. It makes it more of Decker's story, which is what I was saying. Like it just is edited. Because you remove so much of Midian, so you take 20 minutes out, and almost everything that's in the director's cut that's different is all Midian stuff, is all monster stuff. And when you take that out, it really does become more about Deckard and like his like his perversion to murder and blaming it on Boone, and then it ends with his resurrection. So it does become more of his story. I actually think both of them work pretty well.
Let's talk about Deckard too. Like he has a line in that I was really weird, like when he's explaining like when he's talking to the weird old man about all of that about that community and like him killing people. He says, I've been killing breeders for so long, and I didn't know, like, does that mean that he considers himself part of like this community and he's been killing like the normal folk? Like, because it seems like he has this like little monologue where he seems very resentful of like families and nuclear families, and he's destroying this, and he's killing those people specifically. So I always thought it was interesting because he might just not be. I mean, yeah, he might be that force that's a threat to both sides. Like, so it's strange, and maybe he's resentful to Boone because Boone has become part of this community and he's not been able to.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably correct, I would say. And
he says something else like, what we envy, we destroy. So like, it's like, that's another line that stuck out to me. So yeah. I think that's pretty like straightforward. I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't know if I'm just kind of how I read it. That's the great thing about horror movies or movies in general, though. You can read it however you like. But there is definitely, like, considering the filmmaker, the themes, and all this, this definitely is a fever dreamish, nonsensical, like, symbolism of, I think, what a lot of people have experienced in that community, like, especially prior to the civil rights and all of that, where and gay marriage, and just recently like job protection the Supreme Court just passed. Like, that's all, like you said, like, it wasn't very long for this movie when people literally had to hide. Like, Stonewall was a club that was it was a gay club, but it was like a hidden like club run by the mafia just to make money off of the gay community, and they had to pay off the police to like turn the other eye, and they'd come in there and raid and like oppress and like do crazy things, and they finally just had enough, and protest and violent stuff started happening, and that's like the seminal moment. Like in this movie, it seemed very parallel. Like in this movie, the seminal moment is when those people invade their place and they fight back and come out of the for lack of a better pun, they come out of the closet and they're just like, here we are, we're fighting for what we are. Johnny done got angry, y'all. And I think Stonewall was much that in like popular culture, and that's why we have Pride Month, and that a lot of people point to that as when that community finally stood up and said, no, we're not going to hide anymore, and we're not taking this anymore, that we are people, we deserve rights. And they started that. So like Nightbreed, I mean, again, I could be crazy because I looked and I haven't seen anything written about the comparisons, but I think Nightbreed is a pretty like apt parallel allegory of what we saw with like Stonewall.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know anything about it. So just hearing you say that, I'm like, how could that not be an allegory for it? I mean, again, we're talking about a very particular, very smart author who's also a gay man, and I think it would be shocking to learn that it wasn't at least like, influenced by, I think.
Yeah, and even if he was not entirely conscious of it, he lived in that community. That has to influence your storytelling and like your consciousness. So like you saw that, and I'm sure he lived it where he had to hide and had to like, so it had to come through.
So
I thought I knew. I thought I knew, but Stonewall was in New York. I thought it happened in San Francisco, just assuming because of the Castro and that whole community and stuff. But now it happened in New York. So. Yeah,
that's. I think Nightbreed as an allegory for just like not only like the LGBTQ like community and like people that are marginalized. You're really like. You put these people like away from all the cities. You have them. Not only that, they're also living underground and only come out at night. And then if they do walk, they literally wore a normal person's quote unquote face to go outside, and they're like condemned to this place basically because they're different. I think that's at least the very least is what we know like Clive at least meant for this film, right? Like that it's all these marginalized individuals, and there is an interesting choice though that like the main detective is an African American man. I think that's kind of an interesting choice just because it seems to be a movie.
Yeah, and he seems to be like besides following the same problem every other character has this movie where they just take every like sentence at face value and just follow the plot. He seems like wholly like good too. Like he is not.
Yeah.
He's the only one in that forest that doesn't seem like crooked. Like he's just following what's in front of him and trying to do what his job is.
Yeah, we get the sense that he's at least trying to do right. We don't get enough time with him, but like in the time, he's at least played pretty empathetically, I think, to what's happening. And he's not just guns a-blazing. Although he does go in with them.
Baphomet or whatever. Baphomet, or am I messing up his name again?
Baphomet?
Yeah, he's also played by an African-American person. So yeah.
So I do think that was like the only thing that's kind of interesting. But he's played so like, even though he does go along with it, it is kind of interesting. But everyone else in this movie, outside the monsters and that detective, they're all just the whitest people and the most like it just feels very like, I don't know, it feels like the same world as No Country for Old Men. Like everyone feels like that style of Texas to me. But I think it works pretty well. I remember as a kid, and by a kid I mean I think I saw this movie when I was like a teenager. It was not an easy movie to get your hands on. And I remember seeing it on tape and just thinking it was like weird. Like it just was weird to me. I didn't really understand, probably because the plot's all over the place, and I just couldn't really grasp my hands around it. And it wasn't super scary. It just wasn't like a great movie for me at the time. I think as like a 15-year-old boy, I was expecting like, oh, the guy who did Hellraiser, I'm ready to see his next movie. And what I got was this movie. And I'm sure that's why it bombed. But as an adult, my interest was piqued on the Cabal cut, which now became the director's cut. But I do love that there's like 1,000 variants of this movie now, like Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And I think it's much better of a movie than I think. It's still very messy, but the effects are so cool. I think the Danny Elfman score is really great.
I know that shocked the heck out of me. Like Danny Elfman, like that's I did not expect that. That's like one of the first credits to pop up. I'm like, whoa, Danny Elfman. But it is a great score.
Yeah, it's a great score, and I think it's pretty well directed. Like it's I think like Cronenberg's Mask is so neat. I think there's enough in here that's just like it's so worth exploring if you haven't seen this movie, and obviously just spoiled the whole movie for you, but or at least revisiting. If you haven't seen the director's cut, I think it's worth watching just for all the more Midian action and monster action. I think that's worth it.
I did want to say, like, Cabal, I looked that up. His name is, the definition of that is a group of people united in some close design, usually to promote their private views or interest in an ideology. So I think they chose that quite intentionally for obvious reasons. And Midian's from the Bible. And it's one of the, how Abraham had a whole bunch of lovers and a whole bunch of sons, and they started all these religions. Midian was one of the sons of Abraham, and you go through that. And then there's also a city or a group of people in Midian that the Israelites had war with, which is, the Bible's talk about some fucked up, like, violent storytelling. Like, this is Moses commanded 1,000 males from each of the 12 tribes of Israel to destroy the cities and warriors of Midian. The false prophet Balaam was killed along with 5 Midianite kings. Moses decreed that every male child and non-virginal woman be killed, while the virgins were taken by the Israelites as part of the spoils of war. Like, that's Moses. That's like a biblical hero.
Yeah.
I'm like, dang. Like, Bible needs to calm down.
Any other thoughts here on this?
But the Midianites, what they did was they led the people of Israel to sin against God. That was what led to Moses.
Is that why Ashbury hates him so much now? Like, even though he sympathized with them, didn't think they should be killed, he still thinks they should burn in hell.
I guess, yeah. Midian was definitely. Barker has always had a lot of biblical and religious symbols and names and stuff in his work. So I just looked up what those two things were from, and I think that kind of supports what we're talking about. Like, both of those things, it's very definite references to definite things that apply.
I will correct myself here. It was not K&B who did the effects. It looks like Bob Keane and Mark Coulier. Among many other people. There's a ton of people in here that have done a lot of great work. So wanted to correct that.
Is Mark Coulier related to Dave Coulier?
I hope so. I don't think he is. He's British. But they've both done a ton of work.
That's great.
They're two of the top build people. Bob Keane, I think, was the lead on it, but it's kind of hard to see. But he did a lot of stuff here. He was like a model builder on the first couple Star Wars movies. He did Waxwork. He did Hellraiser 1 and 2 and 3.
I think everything inside of what we talked to, I think this movie is worth watching again just for that. Like, the craziness that you get to follow along with, and just seeing how great these practical effects work. Like, it's pretty impressive. Like, nothing looked like it all aged super well. Like, all the monsters look great. All the effects look great. Like, there's nothing that looked really hokey to me in this.
Yeah, no, I think the effects look great. I mean, even the matte work looks tremendous. I think it's a fun movie. It is messy. I won't say it's a perfect film. I'll say if you haven't seen it in a long time, it's absolutely worth the rewatch.
If you get caught up on story problems, you probably won't like this movie because it just leaps all over the place.
They were as late as 2018 or 19. They were talking about doing a TV show of Nightbreed, and I think that could be a more interesting way to go.
Yeah. I think that's really the only way you could approach this story at this point, I think.
Yeah. So that's Nightbreed. I think it's an interesting movie. It's another reason why I think we should have had more Clive Barker things. I think he needed to find. I think a lot of the great filmmaking partnerships happen. I just said it. I think a lot of great films happen out of partnerships, and I don't know if Clive ever had somebody in his corner necessarily. And I think a lot of his films were huge uphill battles, and it was mostly him. Because I know in this particular instance, the studio butted heads, and that's how we got the theatrical cut. There was massively different from what
Yeah,
we see here.
they did that like at the last minute too, from what I was reading. Like they had his cut, like different cut, and then the company just like cut a bunch of shit out of it and then threw it in theaters.
Yeah,
without his consent or anything.
It would have been interesting to see him. I think maybe if he would have found, a producer or something that would have been in his corner the whole time. I've never seen Lord of Illusions.
Is that I think I have.
That's his last movie he did. I think he did it. Let me see here. I'm looking him up real quick because I have his info here. I never saw Lord of Illusions.
I have like visions of it, but if I did, I was very young. And that's what we're doing in this movie or this podcast. I'm just seeing movies I haven't seen for like 30 years. So.
Yeah, I never did Lord of Illusions. You know it based on the cover. But I never saw it. Maybe I'm gonna check it out. I've heard mixed things. I would say like Clive is an inspiration in terms of like the style of horror he did. I think he has such a unique visual flair and voice, and I know like as an author he's very well respected, but I think as a filmmaker he's done a lot for the genre, even in the few films he's done. But this movie that I haven't seen, Lord of Illusions, we're gonna have to cover because it has Scott Bakula in a starring role.
Oh,
so I need it.
Oh boy,
I think I need it.
Did you get the Quantum Leap reference I just did?
Oh boy!
I said, oh boy.
And Famke's in it.
Oh, nice. Let's do it.
All right, we'll check that out. Written and directed by Clive Barker. All right, so coming up in the next couple of years, we'll do that. Anything else you want to say about Nightbreed, or is that it for Nightbreed?
I think that's it. I think it was like we went back and forth on several movies that we could cover that would like touch on some like LGBQT plus like topics in film, but I like this was the one that I was like, I'm going to watch a bunch and we'll decide what we want to do. And I watched this one first, and there was just so much there, and I'm glad we did this.
And I think it's probably the least seen of all of them.
Yeah.
That we talked about.
Well, yeah, for sure.
And so check out Clive Barker's Nightbreed. You can pick it up from Scream Factory for pretty cheap if you want to own it. That surely puts more money in the pockets of people who put out good horror things, both people like Scream Factory and it probably kicks a couple more bucks back into people like Clive Barker's pockets, and all that goes to helping us get more, if not necessarily perfect films, interesting work like this. So I still buy Blu-rays. I don't know. I think I'm the rarity.
No, I do this. Like I'm that guy that'll buy I'm the guy that buys like the physical media stuff that I want, but then I'll still watch the streaming version because in my mind, I gave him the money for the physical media, and this way I'm sending him the 10th of a penny every time I watch it. So I do it both ways.
Well, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Nightmare Hour. Next week, we're going to continue our Pride Month, and I believe, can we say what we're going to do?
If you're positive we're going to do it.
I don't want to look like
liars. Okay.
We haven't done anything mainstream really yet. So we're going to dip into, well, this isn't necessarily mainstream, but we're going to talk about A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, as well as Scream Queen, My Nightmare, I believe this was what it's called. I know it's Scream Queen. It's Mark Patton's film about the making of and the fallout from that film. So those are on your watch list. Go ahead and check them out. And then next episode, we will dive into both of those. I don't know where Nightmare on Elm Street is, but it should be pretty readily available to find or rent. And I'd hope as horror fans, you own the box set. Scream Queen is streaming now on Shudder. So catch up on that, and we will see you same time, next place. The hour may be over, but the clock keeps ticking.
So that's the one we're doing. We're doing that.
I like it. I'm gonna make it work.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll say the Nightmare Hour may be over, but the clock keeps ticking. I'm Adam, and he's Eric.
I go now.
Okay. And I'm Eric.
And happy Pride Month, everyone.
Done.
Is that it?
Yeah. That's
it. Okay. Woo.